Begin our post-lunch session, and this is on the topic of the future of public transport in India, zero emission vehicles and the last mile connectivity. I would like to now take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to our session chair. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Reggie Kumar Pillai, who is the president of India Smart Grid Forum. May I please request him to kindly join us? Please join me in extending a very warm and hearty welcome to him, and we look forward to hearing his expert comments. I would like to invite our eminent speakers for this session. We have with us Ms. Shreya Gaddepalli, who's the country head of ITDP India. Do we have Ms. Gaddepalli here? Should be joining us any minute. May I invite our panelists, Mr. Stefan Kodek, Managing Director of Transversus, Mr. Pavan Malakutla, WRI Raw Center for Sustainable Cities, and Mr. Anil Arora, Country Head of Clean Motion India, to kindly join us. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware that there is indeed a need to rethink the role of public transport to improve our cities, and while improving public transport is essential, it is also important to ensure that people are able to reach these systems comfortably. Accessibility of public transport by
the distinguished panelists and the chair. Indeed, this is a very interesting session. Though this is the most important session for the future of mobility and when we talk of sustainability. In fact, all of you have heard different sessions. We talk of safety, then we had digital transformation in the first session in the morning. We had new business models also in the afternoon yesterday. So we are talking of zero emission of our STUs, especially Himachal. Intermediate public transport, be it taxis, be it autos. The last connectivity could be with shared transport. Then, in fact, of the bicycle sharing. We had a good learning when we were in Canada very recently in May on how the bicycle sharing system could go along. Even the bicycle could be one option which could be non-polluting and which is very environment friendly, good for all of us. The vision of Government of India is to reduce the consumption of fossil fuel and to switch to sustainable transport, renewables. The mission plan envisages a cut in the huge crude oil bills, pollution, saving to the expenditure on foreign exchange. As all of us know, transportation contributes to 70% of pollution today. All of us are contributing to pollution. Be public, private, or whatever mode of transport, we are the major contributor to the pollution, for air pollution. In fact, the deaths due to air pollution is 16 million per annum. I think it could be a little more also. So this is to be handled. So we have to switch to RE mobility. You will be amazed to see what would be the carbon dioxide emission or the carbon footprint that we are going to save by switching over to this RE mobility. In public transport alone, all of us collectively from STUs, we consume 3.5 billion liters of fuel annually. This is diesel alone. So if you just have a multiplying factor of 2.5 to 2.6, which is a World Bank guideline, a liter of diesel emits 2.63 kgs of CO2. If we go by that, just imagine 3.5 billion liters of fuel would generate how many tons and tons of carbon dioxide. I don't want to go into the depth of cost. If you go by electric, this is the cost. If you go by CNG, this is the cost. If you go by waterways, this is the cost. So he made a very good point in our logistic conference also. So the lowest cost was by waterways compared to land. Then when we talk of fossil fuel, electric, the lowest would be electric. When it comes to operation and maintenance cost also will be very low, very, very low. For example, the electricity cost today is on an average as a base Average is about 10 rupees per kilometer on the cost, and it is about 15 to 25 rupees. Most of you have the experience of operating the electric buses per liter per kilometer. We also have a lower cost of maintenance, very low cost of maintenance on electric buses, lesser noise compared to an IC engine, and totally a long-term reduction in cost by over 50% compared to diesel or natural gas vehicles. In fact, we also talk of job creation. Whether we lose jobs, we create more jobs, because wind and renewable energy, we create a lot of jobs. This will be a main driver for our program of Make in India. A clean energy policy is primarily focused on buses, IPT, as I mentioned, the intermediate public transport, the taxis, the three-wheelers, and the cycles, the bicycles, which can also be on electric. So we need an opportunity to disseminate from the learnings from the transport industry for the future of our innovation in transport. With these brief words, I would request our senior MDs and our Vice President to kindly join me to launch an audio-visual of what is our commitment to really go for the electromobility and how we see this. A small video. I need your feedback also, whether this is realistic, whether we can do, whether we can commit, and how do we commit it. I call upon the Vice President, the Managing Director of KSRTC and Telangana SRTC, Mr. Raman Rao, the Senior MD amongst our MDs. Sir, I would request you to join here to launch the AV. I request you to kindly pass on the AV launch button here to launch this video. Kindly have a look at it. We would like to have a feedback on this before we get into the next session.
Mr. Rao, distinguished speakers on the dais, honorable CMDs and MDs of STUs, other distinguished experts from around the world, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me, an old man from in this community, to chair this session. I'm indeed thankful to Asrtu for inviting me. When I say old man, I come from the electric grid operation side and nothing to do with public transport all these years, but we are going to work together to transform the public transportation or mobility and their mobility into electric power supported. most of you don't know, I was introduced as India Smart Grid Forum. This is a public-private initiative of Ministry of Power started in 2010. Our main mandate is to assist or advise ministry in policy making for grid modernization, electric grid modernization, or making it smart with more intelligent systems on the grid. You would ask why. In the traditional grid, we generated electricity from big power plant, transported on very high voltage transmission line to large geography, and stepped down to low voltage and distributed to millions of people. Almost for 100 years, the business of electric industry remains same. Big power plants, large transmission distribution system, and millions of customers. Good quality electricity being very high, and also this distributed resources, solar, wind, etc., which we have very less certainty when it is generating, when it is not generating. Wind can stop any time. When a cloud passes a large solar farm, generation will come down all on a sudden. Variability, managing the grid require more technology on the grid, better visibility, who is consuming how much electricity, when and where in real time. That has become a need. Hence, there is a move towards a smarter grid with more sensors and more automation systems and more IT systems to manage it. So both demand and supply, both are becoming flexible, and we are able to manage that flexibility through new technologies. With electric vehicle coming in, each electric vehicle is a big load. A car is like a couple of air conditioners equivalent to. A bus is like a medium industry. So those kind of load getting added to it, that too with the fast charging devices which require, today it has up to 350 kilowatt fast charging stations are there. Typical cars are charged at 45 kilowatt, 80 kilowatt range. These are very big pieces of load which is coming on the distribution grid, mostly on the low voltage grid, where in the city or on the highways where the stations are installed. It's a major concern for the electric grid. Reason being, the experiment, last 10 years of several experiments with electric vehicles around the world have shown that the user behavior is same. How they use electricity with the electric cars are same like what they do with the other appliances, like they use it during peak hours, tend to use it during peak hours. And another thing, the buying behavior of electric cars are also influenced by friends and neighbors, which lead to creation of pockets of electric vehicle concentration. And in a colony, a grid capacity is limited by a distribution transformer from where we have given connectivity to all the people based on what electrical appliances they have and what load they have applied for. And all on a sudden, in one street, 20 people buy electric car and all of them try to charge it at the same time. My transformer will burn. The whole street will have no electricity. So there has to be intelligent systems in the grid as well as in the vehicle, so that a simultaneous charging of more number of vehicles beyond what the grid can support need to be controlled. So from that perspective, India Smart Grid Forum, we have been working in this initiative for last 2-3 years. And we have, on the charging station, there are different standards existing. While the Japan side has gone on one set of charging standards, the Europe gone on another set. North America has 3 different distinct charging standards, and China has gone on a entirely different charging standards. So if on the DC fast charging when stations which is installed in the country, if we have to have more number of cars to come in, there has to be interoperability, or we have to go for some kind of a charging infrastructure which can be leveraged by different automobile manufacturers. As we speak, there's a committee in the Bureau of Indian Standards which is established that is looking into the electric vehicle charging specifications, the charging station specifications. The AIS standards prepared by ARI is also a guiding point for that. And a DHI appointed committee recently brought out a set of standards for charging stations below 100 volt. So all this will go as input for coming out with standards for electric vehicle charging infrastructure on fast track. For the buses, bus charging is much higher load requirement, and the business model, whether the bus operators will own or the franchisees of electricity distribution companies will own, these are all currently under debate. And strictly speaking, by law, electricity cannot be bought by somebody and resold to a third agency. So sale of electricity by third party require a license. Otherwise, and that require a regulatory change. So we have been working with the electricity regulatory commissions and the forum of regulators and the government to make appropriate changes in the regulation which will enable private agencies to set up charging stations that can sell electricity to car owners or bus owners, truck owners, and that require changes. And similarly, as Mr. Rao in the video had said, that renewable energy is going to power transportation in the coming days. So there has to be concessional tariff. Today, if transportation is taken as a commercial activity and commercial tariff is applied, still there is a cost-benefit analysis compared to per kilometer cost of running a car or a bus compared to diesel or petrol. But if there are many times during the day when there is surplus electricity on the grid, during such durations of surplus generation available on the grid, if we can have concessional or promotional tariff in the initial years, we can kick-start electric mobility. That is another regulatory intervention we have been advocating. So this will also help the grid balance. The idea of the ideal situation of a grid operator is to have a flat load all the time. Almost 80-90% of my grid capacity is utilized, flat load curve. But in practice, it is not like that. In the morning, evening, afternoon, we have peaks. But during low consumption time, if we are able to leverage these vehicles which are plugged onto the network, when the price on the grid is less, they buy and charge it. And when the price on the grid is high, the same vehicle can sell it back to the grid. And millions of electric vehicles plugged onto the grid, we can aggregate as virtual power plant. A large fleet of these vehicles can be aggregated as virtual power plant and operated. That's the future which is going to come to. And another interesting piece of work which we have done, we looked at public transportation electrification in Calcutta. Why we selected Calcutta? Because all modes of transport available there, and that's a city which has started with electric transportation in 1902 with the trams, which are still existing. Calcutta also had a DC 550 volt DC distribution system, which CESC Calcutta was supporting until 2006. But even today for the tram, there is a 550 volt DC distribution system available. DC is an entirely different ball game. There is some distinctly different electrical engineering expertise required to manage this DC grids, which is available in Calcutta. And we studied 925 bus routes in Calcutta and looked at, for pilot implementation, we have taken up 10 routes. We recommended 10 routes where the traffic move the slowest and have the maximum density. And that 10 routes have about 119 buses. We said as a pilot implementation that 10 routes it should take up. There are 7 bus depots, of which 4 bus depots have tram stations by the side where DC distribution system is available, where DC fast chargers can be implemented with marginal cost. But the most interesting part which came out from the study was that we've seen, which is equivalent to many other cities in the country, are a typical route length is 10 to 15 kilometers or 18 kilometers. And in a day, they don't drive more than 100 kilometers. Average bus is driven only around 100 kilometers every day. And today in the world, electric buses are in operation are less than 2,000 of them, and 99% of them come with a huge battery which is 300 kilowatt hour capacity or more. A 300 kilowatt hour capacity battery weighs about 6 tons. The rest of the bus plus 50 passengers weighs much less than that. And the overnight charging of that battery which is done, the electrons during the day is consumed for moving the battery more than the bus and the passengers. That's the kind of buses which are today available in the world, manufactured by big names which you all know. And one of those buses, it drives about 300 kilometers or more during the day, which you don't need in many of the STUs in India or many of the cities in India. That bus, when you import it, because the battery cost itself is 2/3 of the cost of the bus, it is more than 3 crores. And all the studies which have been done by previous many agencies says that 80 to 90 lakhs rupees direct government subsidy is required to make these buses economical with the diesel buses. So in our study, we recommended that there's a need for creating an Indian model of public buses, which is maximum 100 kilometer range a day, a 100 kilowatt hour battery or even lower, and non-AC bus can have 50-60 kilowatt hour battery, and the prices will come well below 1 crore. At that stage, you don't need any government subsidy. A unit of electricity during peak hours at commercial rate, even if I sell it, is only 8 rupees. And a kilometer will go in 1.5 unit of electricity in the existing buses, and the new buses may come to a kilometer per kilowatt hour, something like that. So 12 rupees a kilometer which you can run, but with your diesel it runs much higher, maybe 4 times more or 5 times more. So with this model, without any subsidy, if you only go aggregate your demand of all the STUs together and come out with a tender for 10,000 buses or 20,000 buses, all bus manufacturers will make buses of this specification, which is 100 kilometers driving range, 100 kilowatt hour battery, and a cost which is below 1 crore, which you can afford. So this is a model which we have been advocating. I will not take more time. There are very distinguished people from the transportation industry present here. I will give them a chance to present. I will invite Shreya to... I guess most of you know her, so I need not go through the entire biodata. Shreya is the South Asia Director at the Institute of Transport and Development Policy, a global non-profit organization that works with cities worldwide. Her engagement with the ITDP started in late 90s with the immensely successful India Cycle Rickshaw Improvement Project. This initiative has put on road over 500,000 modern cycle rickshaws that keep the air clean and reduce AGA emissions. Over the last decade, she has guided the planning and design of bus rapid transit (BRT) systems, a form of mass rapid transit that provide low-cost, high-quality, rapid mobility and complete streets that provide safe space for pedestrians, cyclists, and other road users. Shreya has a master's in industrial design from IIT Delhi and also a bachelor in engineering, and she is an avid photographer, enjoys capturing urban life while exploring cities on foot, which is very, very adventurous. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pillai, for that introduction. I'd also like to thank Asrtu for inviting me to speak here. Asrtu is a dear organization which is doing great work, and we look forward to being your collaborators in years to come. This session, I think a lot of you might be expecting that it'll all be about electromobility, but there's also a second half to it, which is about last mile connectivity. And I also want to set a guidance on what I'm going to speak about today, because it's not going to be on electromobility. There are other experts who can speak about electromobility, and technology is important, and I completely understand that. But before technology can work, you also need to have a foundation. And my presentation is going to be about that foundation that we need so that we can apply technology wherever required. My name, as was introduced, is Shreya Gadepalli, and in India, ITDP is a global network, and in India, it's represented by the Urban Works Institute, of which I'm a managing trustee. So I'm in that designation presenting this. ITDP itself is, as I said, a global network which has been around for 30 years now and works across the world in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And our primary goal is to promote sustainable and equitable transportation. So let's jump into it. This is how urban residents in India travel, or urbanites of India travel. And some of you may already know this, but for others it might be surprising that nearly half of the trips in Indian cities are actually on foot or on cycle. And if you were to add to that some form of public transportation, including shared mobility, but primarily in the form of informal public transportation or IPT or share auto rickshaws, that number goes to nearly 80%. So only 20%, somewhere in the range of 20 to 25% of the trips are on personal motor vehicles. 75 to 80% are on foot, cycle, or on public transportation. But this is what we have on the ground. We have more than a third of the trips on foot, but no footpaths. How many of you know of footpaths on which you can walk? None. Practically none. There are more people on cycles than on cars, but there are no facilities for cyclists. Nearly 30% of trips are on public transportation, but except for the top dozen-odd cities, there's no public transportation because it's primarily in the form of share auto rickshaws. So we can all talk about electric buses, and it's great, and maybe we'll go towards electric buses, but the truth of the matter is this is where we are right now. Only 20% of the trips are on personal motor vehicles, of which actually cars account for less than 5%, but they occupy 2/3 of the space on the street, whether for movement or for parking. And especially if you look at it from a gender angle, you'd find that 9 out of 10 trips that women make are on foot or on public transportation. So that's where we are. But we are all enamored by infrastructure, road infrastructure, which is like flyovers and double-level flyovers and triple and fourth and fifth and sixth and 10th levels of flyovers, because that seems to be the answer for our mobility problems. Is that? Is that the answer? Can I hear an answer? Can I really hear an answer? No, right? So, but we still do it. We still create more flyovers and we still keep expanding our roads, imagining that somehow it will solve the problem. And we think that there will be free flow forever. The truth is that it's an illusion. It's an illusion, and not just an illusion, it's an addiction. And somewhere we need to get rid of this addiction to expanding road space for cars, because that's not the answer. Because you can't cure obesity with bigger pants. You just can't. The answer is to get fit. And that fitness is called walking, cycling, and public transportation. But our streets are like this. Cars and personal motor vehicles take a lot of space, and we also assume that that's the truth. That's how it should be. No, the reality is that's how it should be. It should be equal, where a car gets only as much space as a pedestrian does, or a cyclist does, or a public transportation system does, or a rail system does, or a bus does, or a train does. But the direction that we are heading in is the US-centric model of cars, where that is where we will eventually end up, where we will have more parking than building. I'm not joking. In most cities in US, except for a few here and there, you would have 3/4 to 4/5 of the land used for parking. You'd have a restaurant which will have 10 tables, and you'll have a space 10 times that size for parking outside. Is that the vision? Would you like your city to be like that? Yes or no? No. Would you like your city to be like this? Siesta time? Yes? Can I hear a loud yes? Exactly. So let's build that. So how do we build that? Our residents, or urban residents, are actually increasing, and increasing at a fast pace. So fast are we increasing that between 2011 and 2031, 20 years, we would have added the entire population of Japan into our cities, over and above what they already have. So that's like 200 million people. That's 20 crore more people in our cities. And all of them need transportation. So we have two visions of where we can go. The first vision, obviously, which is wrong, is that you will keep increasing cars and motorcycles in our cities, which will create more and more traffic jams. So you will go from essentially what you see on the left side, the red is cars and motorcycles. So you'll have nearly a 2.5 to 3 times more traffic on the streets. You would not like that, right? Or you can actually go to the other scenario where you restrain the amount of traffic that you have and instead increase significantly the amount of public transportation. Now that's the future. Then this is what we need to build. For every million residents, we need to build 80 kilometers of complete streets. 80 kilometers of complete streets. 2,000 to 4,000 shared cycles, which was spoken about earlier, 400 to 600 buses, and 20 to 30 kilometers of rapid transit. But when you multiply that with the population that we have, these are the numbers that you get. 32,000 kilometers of streets, 1 million cycles, shared cycles, nearly 250,000 buses, urban buses. I'm not talking about all buses, urban buses alone, and about 6,200 kilometers of rapid transit. So how are we going to make that, and what we're going to do? But this presentation is not actually about that. I'm assuming that somehow we will all join hands and make this happen But really, we need to change the way our cities itself are built. Because smart cities are transit-oriented cities. So what am I talking about? So presently, take a city, an average city. And this is how the development is. Like, even though the municipal borders are around, this is how the development is. It's fairly compact. You have short trips. You have concentration in the core, city core, and which is all good because you don't travel too much. But that's not how it's going to remain in 15, 20 years from now. What will happen is that there'll be sprawl. There'll be more and more development, which has already happened in places like Delhi and in Bangalore and some of the larger cities. You'll have longer and longer trip lengths, and you will have a dispersion of activities into peripheral areas. And this is what the development itself is going to look like, right? And this, you think, is actually a rendering. It's actually not a rendering. It's a real picture. It's a real picture of a development outside Mexico City. And where is that? Out there. So Mexico City is a city which is 50 by 50 kilometers broadly, and this is 50 kilometers outside the edge. Just doesn't make sense. So what we need to do is to develop mass rapid transit and buses and more public transportation and build our development around it. We need to create more development which is closer and integrated with this mass rapid transit that we have. And that's what TOD is about, transit-oriented development. So you create more and more dense environments near stations of rapid transit. It could be bus rapid transit or it could be metro, whatever it is, but you need to create more people. You have to create the ability for more people to live, work, and play near transit. This is what some cities like Ahmedabad are doing. We helped Ahmedabad do some of this work, and we are also helping some of the other cities with technical support. But density is not it. It's not just about density. It's about many other things. We need to create so much of development around transit that you have at least 80% of population which is actually living there so that it has the ability to walk, access that public transportation. But which means that you actually need connected streets. So what am I talking about? So imagine that's the corridor, the north-south corridor that you see on the left side, and there's a bus stop there, right? And this happens to be a house. What would be the most natural way that you'll go from this house to the bus stop? You'll walk like that, right? Right? This actually happens to be my own house in Gurgaon, and that happens to be a road called Sona Road. It doesn't have rapid transit yet. It doesn't have actually even transit yet. But imagine if it were, and if I were to reach that spot, the only way I can reach is this way. Now keep watching. You know why? Because there's no street there along the yellow path. They are separate building blocks which are all gated communities, and I have no way actually of crossing. So which means that even though the bus stop is 300 meters away from me, I actually have to walk 1.5 kilometers to reach the same bus stop. And am I going to take a bus if I have to walk 1.5 kilometers to reach a bus stop? No. So I am within 300 meters, but I can't take a bus. And this is what the kind of development that we are creating in our cities in India. So what we need to do is to create actually development which has a lot of streets, which has a lot of small connected streets. And the thumb rule for that is a block. A block is an area of development which has public streets all around, should be no larger than 1 hectare. When it's no larger than 1 hectare, which means 100 meters by 100 meters, you can actually reach the public transportation. Not like the way I had shown earlier. And you can have great environment for public. So what you need to do is restrict block sizes to less than 1 hectare and create public transportation accessible by walk and cycle. Now, it's not just enough to create a grid of streets. What you also need to do is to create footpaths. But these are the footpaths that we have. You know why we create footpaths like this? Ever imagine why we create footpaths like this? Because we did not get an Olympics medal last time. We need to train for the Olympics hurdles race. I'm serious about it. Because why else would you create a footpath like this? Or we have all our school children and others who are walking on the street and there's absolutely no footpath there. Why? So the answer is we have no place for footpaths. Because we think there is no place for people who walk. Even though 1/3 of the people in India are walking, 1/3 of people, and who have nothing to do with any other mode of transportation. I'm not even counting the walk trip from your home to public transportation. I'm talking about only walk trips. And 1/3 are walking and we don't have space for walkers. What do we need to do? draw a line there, like literally draw a line there, and call that a footpath. Like, you need to create a footpath where people are walking. And this is what some cities in India are already doing. This is Chennai, which had footpaths, messy footpaths like this. You had parking on top of it. You had electric boxes. You had whatever, all kinds of muck. But that's not how it looks like now, because this is what has happened to that street. It's been transformed. You have much wider, nicer walking environment. And the city is making more. The city is actually going to build good footpaths on all its 480 arterial streets. It has a non-motorized transport policy, and it's doing a bunch of other things, which you can know about if you go online. And now Pune is also doing the same thing. These are some great footpaths that Pune city has created. Great work, Pune Municipal Corporation and its consultants and others, and we've been helping them with some guidance. And they also have a street design guidelines for the city. So you need all these things to ensure that you create great footpaths. And then what you need to do is to break walls. What kind of walls am I talking about? These kinds of walls is what I'm talking about. Most of our streets are actually like this. You have walls behind, buildings behind walls. Would you walk there? Would you walk there even if you have a great footpath? Maybe. But how many women out here in the evening will walk on a desolate street like this? Will you? No. Will you walk here? Yes, because it's an active street. Because you feel safe, you have other eyes on the street. So what we need to create is development which is not behind walls, but development which is next to the street. So instead of having development which looks like, I'm sorry, I can't actually move. Development which actually looks like this, which has big boundary walls and development somewhere else, you actually start making something like this. And this is what, if you remember, all our old developments looked exactly like this. So if you take Connaught Place or South Bombay or any of the older developments, the buildings came till the edge of the street. It's only the new developments which we are putting behind walls because our regulations require them to be behind walls. So let's stop building walls. Let's start building bonds instead, right? There's a TOD standard which was developed by ITDP and many other experts. You can access that if you are interested. And the last thing that I'd like to talk about today is parking it right. Park it right. Do you agree that you have a parking problem in your city? Yes? Yes? Everybody agrees that there's a parking problem in your city, right? What was happening here? Sorry. Do you agree with that? No? But a lot of people think it is. Otherwise, why would they just park wherever they can? Because they think it's a birthright. But the truth is, it's not a birthright. Parking, this doesn't seem to work, is a myth. That parking is a birthright is a myth. This is how parking is. Okay? So when you go buy an air conditioner, from an electronics shop and come back and say, government, hey government, municipal corporation, I bought an air conditioner, please give me a room to fix it in. I bought an air conditioner, please give me a room for free to fix it in. Sounds absurd? Bizarre? Now when it comes to a car, we do exactly the same thing. We go to a showroom, we buy a car, and we come back and say, government, I bought a car, you give me the parking. Government, I bought a car, you give me the parking, and I don't want just one parking because I want 3. I want one at my home, I want one at my office, I want one at the mall, I want one at the park, I want parking everywhere. On an average, every car requires 3 parking spots in a city, per car. That's how much? Each car parking spot requires about 250 square feet. So that's 750 square feet per car of urban land, we think, has to be given to parking. It's absurd. It's not. It's actually parking is a commodity which you have to pay for. Like you pay for your house, you pay a rent or you buy a house, you go rent a shop or you buy it, you need to go buy parking or rent parking. More parking also doesn't solve problem. It's a myth that it solves because this is what parking is like. So you have parking, that's the sign for parking, right? But that sign actually is a magnet. What kind of a magnet? It says come to me. Come to me. Says you have parking, come to me. So which means you have more and more vehicles that are coming that way, which means what are you going to have on the streets? Traffic jam. So the more parking that you have, the bigger the traffic jams. Sounds counterintuitive? Difficult to believe? But that's the truth. The more parking that you have, the more the traffic jams. So if we want to reduce traffic jams, we need to reduce the total amount of parking that we have in a zone. So instead of doing this, giving more and more parking, we need to build something like this, where you have transit underneath, there are buses on the side, there's great walking environment. This is one of the best streets in Barcelona, called the La Ramblas. And you have something like 14,000 pedestrians walking up and down in the evenings. And there's no traffic jam, because there's limited space for cars and there's lots of transit and great walking environment. Multi-level car parking is also not the answer. It's a myth, because which idiot is going to go park in a multi-level parking and pay money when you can park for free on the street? If you can park for free on the street, will you go pay and park in a building? I will not, because it's foolish. But if you start charging for the parking on the street and managing that parking and enforcing that parking, maybe you can get people off onto those buildings. So what you need to do is first start managing on-street parking. Also, parking has a price because it requires space. Each car parking space is the same size as one EWS apartment, as a space for 4 people to work in, office space. Now, this is the bizarre thing, right? So an average person actually gets only about 75 square feet of workspace. If you are a mid-level officer, you'll get only 75 square feet of workspace, but your car will get 4 times as much. Who's more important, you or your car? So let's think about this in more sense. And finally, we think that density creates congestion. But building density actually does not create congestion. Parking does. When you have more cars, more vehicles will come on the street to reach that. But if you actually do not have parking and you have transit, you can actually build very high density. That's what cities have done in the world. So Hong Kong has a density of something like 20 FAR, not 2 FSI, not 1.5 FSI, not 1 FSI, 20 FSI. New York does that. All these cities, London does that. But what do they also do simultaneously? They actually do not allow parking. Those buildings do not have parking. Some of the best buildings in London, like the Gherkin or the Shard, actually have more or less no parking. You have 35,000 square meters of workspace and 35 parking units. 35 parking units, and all of them are actually dedicated to those who are disabled. So let's change that. So what should be done? We should start managing on-street parking. First of all, draw lines properly where you can park and you cannot park. You need to charge for parking. So rather than it being free, you need to actually start charging for it, and you need to charge more for on-street parking than off-street parking because it's more premium, right? It's a more wanted parking. If the demand increases, what do? You increase the price. If the demand for a stock increases, what happens? If a demand for a stock increases, what happens? The price increases. So if the demand for housing in a certain area increases, what happens? If the demand for housing, so where are you from, sir? Yeah, in Bangalore. So if the demand for housing on MG Road increases, what will happen to the price of housing? Goes up. So if the demand for parking increases, what should happen? The price should go up. Logical, right? If it goes up for human beings, why should it not for cars? So it has to increase and use all that money, because there's a lot of money that you can get. Our calculations tell that for every kilometer of street which has parking management and parking fee, you have enough money to buy 10 new buses and rebuild that street with a full footpath, great footpath and walking environment, and maintain all of it. Just 1 kilometer, you get 10 buses. So if you do 100 kilometers, you'll get 1,000 buses. So if your city says, I don't have money for buses, So you have so many of you who are here who are STUs. If your government says there's no money for buses, please go back to them and say, please charge for parking and give me that money. Logical, right? That's where the money is going to come from, not with a begging bowl. And finally, reduce or remove parking minimum. So you should not have parking in the buildings. You should actually have a cap. You should restrict the amount of parking that's there in buildings. I'm going to end now. This is the last slide. And if you do all of this, if you build cities for cars, you'll have a mess. You'll have traffic jams, you'll have pollutions, you'll have road deaths. If you build cities for people, with transit, with density, with walking environments, you'll have happiness. So add transit, create walking, build inclusive transit-oriented development, cut parking, and what is like this can actually become like this. With great walking, great mass rapid transit, mixed use, active edges, great housing, high density, and with parking reforms. I'll leave you with a thought from the father of the nation that there's enough for everyone's need, not enough for anyone's greed. So let's turn the pyramid around. Let's put those pedestrians who are at the bottom at the top, and let's put those cars which are at the top at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya. With all the advocacy for limiting the cars, I hope there are not many only car manufacturers in the audience and we can go out without being manhandled. So I have the pleasure of inviting Stephen Kodek for the next presentation. Over to you, sir. He's an economic graduate, spent 19 years working for Unilever in different countries in Europe in different functions, and then he joined independent mutualities and active in Belgium health sector as an executive director, handling finance, HR, legal, etc. And 4 years he was head of the public transport company in Brussels, the bus operation of STIB. And thereafter in 2014 he started his own consulting, Transversis, a consulting firm mainly active in operational and change management and in financial modeling. Over to you, Stephen.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. What I will talk about is the UITP bus benchmarking model. Because what we have just heard is that we have changes in public transport, which means that our business models are also going to change. It's important to manage, to anticipate what will be the evolution if we move to more electric buses, what will be the impact. Well, very quickly a few words about myself. If it works, I'm a Belgian. And for those of you who don't know Belgium, let me show you 2 pictures from my country. And that has been said by Mr. Pillay already. How to make benchmarking work. Sorry, I've got some trouble with this. The KPIs we all use are not comparable. Even if the definition is the same, the way the data are gathered are different. Comparisons of results can be misleading, and conclusion from benchmarking can be simply wrong. On top, we all have different buses using different technologies. We have different currencies, and the organizations are organized differently as well. The risk of benchmarking is to compare apples and oranges. But when we slide these fruits, we use a common tool, a knife. In other words, even if the fruits are different, the activity is the same. So if we base our benchmarking on activities instead of benchmarking, making the comparisons on costs, we can compare performance. This is the whole idea behind the UITP bus benchmarking model. A working group initiated in 2011 has developed a standard model with a detailed description of each of the activities, split into direct and support activities. Direct activities represent the core of the business, and the support activities are those that are necessary to run the business. The implementation process of this model has two steps. Firstly, the company receives a certification based on the link made between the available data and the model. This results in a company report. The second step is the benchmarking itself. The model has 5 direct activities and 9 support activities. The work to be done is to link the available costs or cost centers and personal data to each of these activities. Based on the experience gained so far, there is a one-to-one relationship between cost centers and activities in approximately 70% of the cases. The results of this exercise are summarized on a A4 page only. No more information is needed. And then the benchmarking can start. Let me take 4 examples. If you compare the total cost for direct activities with the total of the company costs, you get a view on the intensity of the cost involved in core business activities compared to the total. From year 2, you get also a time series that will show the trend in a dynamic way. Example 2 shows how these results can be compared with the other companies. Please note that in the benchmarking booklet, the results will be anonymized. You can see your relative position compared to the others. The third example shows the number of people working for transporting passengers, basically the drivers, compared to the number of people managing them. And there are also big differences between companies. You can also do the same, for instance, for the HR department. How many people do you have in your HR department compared to the number of people working in the company? The fourth example focuses on support activities. How much represent the costs for a specific support activity in comparison with the total of all support activities? Rankings can be made between companies. As you can see from these 4 examples, the approach is pragmatic and straightforward, with a limited effort involved. It highlights the similarities and differences between companies. It gives a clear and innovative overview on the business. It can also serve as a strategic instrument from medium and long-term perspective. The target audience for this macroeconomic exercise are the CEOs and the board members. This initiative is innovative and unique. The methodology is proven. This is truly international. The results give a new insight on the business dynamics and allow to identify areas for further investigation and improvements. The investment in time and money remains limited. The rollout started mid of last year, and close to 10 companies have decided to join the initiative up to now. The first benchmarking report is expected to be issued in September 2017. 2 Indian cities will participate to this exercise, Chandigarh and Bangalore. Due to time constraints, this presentation gives only a flavor of what benchmarking initiative of the UITP BIS committee is. I remain available today for any question you might have. You can also contact Yaspal Singh from UITP to get more information. I hope you have enjoyed this short presentation. I wish you all the best for your businesses and can only encourage you to join the existing community of participating companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, I'll invite Pawan Mulukutla, is the head of integrated transport at WRI. Pawan is responsible for working with various stakeholders and transport agencies to provide technical support, sensitizing sustainable development and build capacity at various public transport agencies. He coordinates the technical support for city bus service operations, feasibility implementation of bus rapid BRTs, station access and mobility programs, parking policy reforms and corporate road safety in India. He provides technical inputs and solutions for city bus service improvement ranging from operational efficiency, integrated ticketing, fare structuring and subsidies. He is also the principal author of Bus Karo 2.0, case studies from India on the current status of city bus systems. He studied civil engineering from NIT Bhopal and holds a master's in transportation engineering from Clemson University, South Carolina. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Before we play the video, I just wanted to share, because the session is on two topics. Good afternoon, everyone. One is around electric and zero emission, and the other one is around last mile connectivity. I think the session chair really set out the context about the regulations around what will be needed in the electricity sector for electric buses, and I think Shreya has really talked about and hit hard on why we really need last mile connectivity and various issues. In a minute, I would like to share my thoughts on electric. I think there are 2 or 3 key challenges that have been pointed out and that needs to be addressed by nodal agencies like Asrtu. One is very clearly around the cost of buses. I think is a big issue for STUs, and the battery is a big challenge. In that context, is there a model to really look to separate out battery costs from the bus is something that has to be explored. I mean, why should STUs be only thinking of buying it as an asset? Why can't they really look at it as a lease model? And can, my question I'm just throwing open is also, can utility agencies take the lead actually to start providing a new form of energy which is in batteries? So I think that is the very revolutionary thinking probably that we will need in Indian context, that why should STUs focus on getting bus plus battery, which is 3 crores plus, and there are so many issues. Why can't they really think of only looking at getting the bus and they're getting the batteries? Is it leasing the batteries from some of these providers, or is it really having a new business model where agencies like electric utility agencies are taking the lead to actually start providing batteries? I think there is a merit to look at that kind of a business model, and probably that will really help in advancing the conversation on electric buses in Indian context. So WRI did a global study looking at application of electric buses in 50 cities around the globe, and it was very interesting to see that electric bus has been seeing a phenomenal growth in China. Obviously, we see some movement in Europe and in North America. And one of the key reasons that we see that electric bus conversation has moved forward is because of national policy. I think that has been the driver. And in Indian context, I see that is the only way probably it will advance. Otherwise, expecting STUs which are faced with so many challenges and have them invest on capital costs for buses will really further take them into such a big issues, because they already face so many challenges. So I would really say that there has to be a lot of thinking around this on how we really start looking at electric buses. I mean, we have this great opportunity. And in, sir, you also mentioned about the emission levels. We know that India is very much thermal driven. What we have seen is, when you talk about air quality, the question that we need to answer is, are we really worried about the local exposure, because that's what really is dominating, and are we really talking about transporting the emissions to some other locations? In that context, probably it may not be worth to have more deliberation that in cities which have pollution as a major concern, that electric buses would be a way forward to really start thinking. So these are some thoughts around electric buses, but the key factor really remains that financing model is going to be the key driver, and national policy which drives would really see that we will see a lot of pilots happen in cities. I would really say a word of caution that instead of jumping and saying that we are going to really convert everything into electric buses, STUs would really have to do a couple of pilots to really take lead, because we have issue of battery. We also have issue of temperature. We really don't have any understanding on, in Indian context, high temperatures, how will it really impact the operations. And one more thing, the range in Indian cities is STUs typically operate 200 to 250 kilometers. So that's a concern. So should we talk about terminal charging, or are we talking about fast charging? Because in Italy we have seen in some cities, they are charging at stations. Those models have come out. We are also seeing like chargings at locations where you can charge for 6 minutes. So there is those kind of technologies that is evolving. There is a lot to learn, and I think it's a good food for thought to have more discussions around electric and not jump and say that this is the only way. So I think those are 3-4 comments around electric. My presentation is actually on last mile connectivity, and I'm really going to talk about not why we should do it, but how we can do it. Can we please have the video?
We're building the world's first on-demand public transit direct-to-destination service.
We are the biggest parking aggregator in Bangalore.
We are citizens for sustainability. We focus on sustainable mobility solutions.
We know that 50 cities around India are rolling out metros. For these to work, first mile and last mile solutions are key.
I think STAMP will definitely play a very effective role in trying to find the perfect solution for the metros.
I'm happy to note that the STAMP program will be able to provide last mile connectivity to the much needed commuters of Bangalore.
Exciting, collaborative, a platform where a number of stakeholders will come together to find solutions.
Seriously innovative, seriously required. It's a great initiative.
Presentation, please. So I'm really going to talk about what we did in last mile connectivity experience in Bangalore, and we have partnered with BMRCL and BMTC on this initiative. Mr. Yadav, chairman of BMTC, is also here, is aware of this initiative. So we have been really talking about, we know all the challenges that our Indian cities have, but the question is also how do we really address this last mile connectivity in Indian cities. And in that context, we came up with this initiative called STAMP, which is Station Access and Mobility Program. Yeah. So we came up with this 4-step approach of looking actually at collecting data around metro. In Bangalore, we have about 42 kilometers of metro, which is operational right now, phase 1. And when we started looking at data, how people are looking at their last mile connectivity, it was really astonishing. Any guess on what is the preferred mode for last mile connectivity? The preferred mode for last mile connectivity. Once you are out of metro, what is the mode, or how are people using it? Three-wheeler, BMTC, okay. Walking. It is very interesting that at some of terminal stations we saw that actually buses are the backbone for feeder services, and in some of the intermediate stations we saw that walking was actually more dominant. For example, if you are familiar with Bangalore, the MG Road stretch, which is very commercial, walking was dominant. But at other stations, it is the feeder buses, which is like more than 50% of people coming out of metro are using bus services. In that context, it's really to start thinking that for different modes, we really have to come up with different solutions. It's really a very contextual element. It's not that only this mode will work. How do we really encourage what Shreya has already talked about, the walking, the cycling, the bus services? I think these, and of course the autos, these 3-4 modes form the backbone of last mile connectivity in our Indian cities. We came up with this Accelerate program, which we have been running for a year. We did several workshops to engage with entrepreneurs, with citizens group, with government agencies to really understand how do we really design a last mile connectivity around specific stations. We ran this initiative 2 months back. We had about 80 applications that I showed on our video, and solutions were wide, from parking management to really shuttle bus services on demand, to how auto services on demand, and really coming up with very interesting ideas. We have actually shortlisted these 5 winners, and we are supporting them through a grant. And these solutions are looking at, one is a citizens initiative to really benchmark how to look at last mile connectivity in metro stations. That's what the citizens are really looking at. And they're also looking at developing some solutions around metro stations. There's this Metro Bikes, which is a rental company around two-wheelers. We know that in Bangalore, 70% of the mode share is actually by two-wheelers. And in that context, how do we really, instead of encouraging more motorization, like how do you use your existing assets? So I think that's an interesting business model. And of course, there's a carpool solution of Quick Ride and Taproot. These are students from BITS Pilani who are really looking at auto rickshaws, and they're really trying to really aggregate not only demand, but also at the origin end, but at the destination end. These initiative right now, the stage where we are in is we are testing these solutions. We are running a pilot with them for next 3-4 months at 2 metro stations. One is Baipanhalli and SV Road in Bangalore. And what we really want to understand is what kind of a business model is possible for this last mile solutions, because we do understand there's a lot of challenges that cities face. But in this context, is there an opportunity for innovation and technology to really come through and help in improving last mile connectivity solutions? And this is typically the kind of feeder systems or a last mile that you look for. When you're talking about walking, it is like within, immediately within 100, 200 meters of the station, all the way you can walk up to 1 to 2 kilometers. Bicycling is up to 4. When you're talking about auto rickshaws, buses, taxis, and cars, you're talking about 5 to 10 kilometers. These are some pictures from the challenge that we ran. And, access also varies with urban context. These are some examples that we are really showing how it is in Amsterdam versus in DC area versus in Delhi. And when you really look at the modal shares, it's completely different, that we have a very huge share of walking in our Indian cities and also IPT usage. This is some examples from Chennai. Like the photo to your right is really the station at the railway station at the center of the city, and you really see that walking is such a big challenge there. And then you have this nice images on the left, very close by, where you have this connectivity. And when we see walking, we really know that no need to re-emphasize that Indian cities have a big challenge to play. And of course, bicycle parking. The image to the right is the bike sharing system, is the dedicated cycle lane in Bhopal, where they have really started this a month back. And it's really good to see that if you're talking about promoting cycling in Indian cities, bike sharing systems where Mysore has launched, and we also have seen it in Bhopal, and many other cities are planning. One of the key important elements is you need a dedicated bicycle lanes. Otherwise, it would be really a big road safety issue. And we see that some cities have started that plunge to really start building that infrastructure. And of course, the importance of IPT, this is in buses. And we are helping BMTC to really redesign all the feeder systems to the metro. We have been working with them to develop feeder systems for their metro lines. We are looking at, since the ITS technology is in place, so we have the boarding alighting patterns, the data available to really think of, what kind of a feeder system would work. Because typically in our cities in Bangalore, typical bus lengths would be 20-25 kilometers. But when you're talking about feeder, 20-25 kilometers will not work. We really have to think of shorter loops and systems that will really help high frequency service to take to the metro. And of course, how does the taxi and shared space really work? I think this was discussed in the earlier session. Just as a closing thought, I think there are 2-3 things. When we are talking about last mile, I think it's an opportunity for multimodal integration and also improving the quality of service. I think those are the 2 elements I would really say: quality of service and multimodal integration. And while we really have technology to really enable different kinds of solutions, but the underlying message remains very clear that without a proper infrastructure in place, whatever we may do will not be successful. So we really need to have very good infrastructure to support our bus systems. I mean, how can you not actually, when we're thinking of metros or any other high transit, if you're not providing for your bus to really come in and connect to the metro station, and you have the space available for private taxis, that really is not a very good model. We really need to start thinking how we are able to integrate different services into the solution. I think we all know, but it's all about how do we get it done, and Stamp is one initiative in that direction to really see can we work on these models, and we'll be happy to share the results once we are complete. Thank you very much.
You don't have a presentation. Talk for 5 minutes. Oh, you can talk from there. You want to talk from there or here? But I can talk from there. Is it a group discussion? No, you can talk and then we'll ask for questions because we have to close in another 15 minutes.
After the session, we will want a distribution.
Yeah. So we started 45 minutes late, so we close in 4:15. Okay. Is that okay? And another 15 minutes.
If additional secretary, she's on the way.
That's okay. Let her come. Doesn't matter.
She comes, and we will go over the awards, and then we can take the questions.
That's okay. That's okay. Perfect. One couple of points which you raised in the beginning. Yes, that is being explored at the national level for the new mission which will be relaunched. Actively looking at a model of battery being leased by a third agency, which is physically today possible in the three-wheelers. All new three-wheelers will be sold without batteries, and a large battery leasing agency in a city will own and charge and lease those batteries on a daily basis. Like today, a three-wheeler goes to a fuel station and buy fuel for 200 rupees. He will be renting a charge battery, because a three-wheeler battery which is going to be 2.5, 3 or 4 kilowatt hour, which can be easily lifted by 2 people and bolt it in few minutes. But a bus battery, even if it is 100 kilowatt hour battery, it's going to be 2 tons, and which may have about 30-40 bolts to be tightened to perfect tension, torque, which is a task. And many people have been trying on the battery swapping model with robotic arm, which none has been perfected yet. The new committee here under Professor Junjunwala's leadership is actively looking at a model where bus batteries can be swapped and it can be charged. The main reason is that batteries need to be charged. Today's battery chemistry need to be charged at a particular temperature. If it is charged at 45 degrees centigrade of Delhi, the life will be over in much lesser time than the assured timelines or number of cycles which is battery manufacturers are giving. So if you do it below 30 degrees centigrade, the life of the battery is much higher. So in a battery swapping model, you can put it in an air-conditioned place where batteries can be charged, which is a challenge today. So different models are emerging for buses, but as you said, some trials and experience in this area is required for STUs before we get into a large thousands of buses rollout. Yes, maybe, but in the next 2 years we should do it without delaying any further. For three-wheeler, for sure, the new generation of three-wheelers are going to be that way only. Batteries will be separate. Battery leasing and charging agencies will be doing that. And on the electric utilities coming into it, yes, NTPC, Power Grid, these companies have been asked to look at the feasibility of coming into this area of battery owning and charging and leasing services. So now I will request Anil Arora, who is the country head of Clean Motion. Over to you. Clean Motion is a Swedish startup which is functional in India now. They are making electric three-wheelers. And Anil been associated in the electric vehicle industry for the last 15 years. Earlier he was with a British company, Ultra Motors, commercializing motor technology in India. He holds a master's degree in international relations. Over to you, Anil.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. I was told this is a group discussion, so I didn't really make a presentation. But we look at first and last mile connectivity from a slightly different perspective. From a business standpoint, we don't theorize the whole thing. We generally look at first and last mile connectivity to see that does it pay off running an electric vehicle between various formats, be it a mall, be it a metro, be it a commercial complex. And we stumbled upon this many years ago, before they started talking of first and last mile. when we did a small pilot between Select City Walk, a high-end mall in South Delhi, and the metro station. And we had some cheap Chinese electric rickshaws, which we assembled here, and we ran them for 1.5 to 2 kilometers. And in a few months' time, we found that it was a very profitable business. It was far more profitable to run an electric vehicle because of low maintenance costs and low energy costs. So we were consuming 2 units of energy, and we were running the vehicles almost 50 kilometers. Subsequently, we found the Chinese products didn't work. They failed in India. And eventually, those kind of products today are on the Indian streets, unfortunately, and they're called electric rickshaws. They use lead-acid batteries. Mechanically, they're not very sound. They don't pass all the safety norms of the ARAI standards on 3-wheelers. So we bought in a product which we felt was world-class, and we tried to disrupt a category between an air-conditioned taxi and a very unstructured first and last mile, where you had rickshaws, you had electric rickshaws, you had auto rickshaws fleecing people. And in the last, we got the product completely certified in India, so it's certified as a proper auto. Our drivers have licenses, and we try to bring in some corporate ethics into a very unstructured business. So I won't take up much of your time, because a lot of what we hear, we actually have practiced on the ground. Now, if somebody says you cannot charge a battery at 45 degrees, we've had those problems actually on the ground. We have, at the end of the day, after doing 70 or 80 kilometers, we've had batteries which have gone up to 52 degrees Celsius in the height of summer. And we've had to wait an hour, put in a fan, cool it, and then charge it. But having said that, the business is very sustainable as we see it, because we are doing some high-end mall formats, we're doing high-end commercial complexes. In fact, we have 2 vehicles outside. And we said that if you can replicate this with a national footprint, and if you can do the metro cities, you can do the heritage sites, and then move down to tier 2 cities, work on smart cities. So we're working with some stakeholders on smart cities. So at the end of it, somebody has to take the first mover advantage or disadvantage. Sometimes it's an advantage, sometimes it's a disadvantage, because, you build the whole market and somebody smarter than you comes and, manages to roll out more vehicles than you. But we've done it, and, our experience is that the issues, whatever they are in theory, battery swaps, charging stations, battery temperatures, these we can all work around. These are not, the key challenges to the business. Especially like I cannot talk about buses and I cannot talk about cars, because these consume a lot of electricity and they're high voltage products. So you need 80 kilowatt chargers and 100 kilowatts. But today, if you look at India, 99% of the electric vehicles are in the low voltage segment. They are scooters, they are e-rickshaws, auto rickshaws. So the first step that we should take is to build the infrastructure for products which are already existing on the road. And building charging infrastructure for these products is very low cost. You can get a DC rapid charger, 6 kilowatt, built at about $1,000. But we don't see there's much of an understanding around that, because the categorization of electric vehicles still hasn't taken place. So, you could broadly divide it into categories of low voltage vehicles, where you have the light electric vehicles, then you have the cars, and then you have the buses. So in the light electric vehicles, we don't see, and we don't look at much support. So we're building our own charging infrastructure. We're coming up with that. And what we find is there's a lot of hands-on interest from private players. So, we get support from most of the real estate people. We get support from the local authorities. But so far, we've not really looked at what the vision of the government is. There's a lot of it being talked about. But even without government support, we find that it's a sustainable business. What is the vision for electric vehicles going forward? We see the government talk a lot about, the subsidies. We see them talk about batteries. We see them talk about charging stations, battery swaps. So battery swaps is something that we are very actively working on in Sweden, because it might, what we feel is that there should be a hybrid model where you have a battery swap with a charging station, or you have mobile battery swaps. So these are things that we could implement, and hopefully in the next 8 to 10 months, we will be able to demonstrate in this, in this country around Delhi NCR, which we could roll out the entire ecosystem of battery swap, charging station, and vehicles. We've been fortunate because we did a small survey with one of our clusters in Gurgaon, and we operated about 30 vehicles which are still in service. We ran them for 2 years, no problem with the vehicles. And we saved something like 30,000 tons of carbon just operating in a 5-kilometer geofenced area. So the key takeaways, and I won't waste much of his time, I think we are running late. The key takeaways about electric vehicles is that it's a vertical, it's not an automobile player comes in, retrofits a Bajaj auto and puts in a battery and a motor and a controller and puts it on the road. There are huge other challenges. So basically, our principals in Sweden understand that. The key challenge is you need to build a vehicle ground up, which is an electric vehicle. You need to move to lithium batteries. I don't think lead-acid batteries are the technology that will drive the electric vehicle business in India. And we need to build a charging infrastructure. Now, whether a private player does it or the government does it, it has to come up very quickly. We find we have a huge problem at the end of the day when we've run the number of kilometers and we don't have a quick charger to charge the battery in 10 minutes. There we lose out on fuel vehicles, because you can take a gasoline vehicle to a petrol pump and refill it in 5 minutes. But here we take, even with a standard 220 volt, we take 2 hours to charge. But these are issues which we can address with the government, or the government addresses it for the private players. But it's still very much up in the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you for bringing the issue of lead-acid battery versus the lithium-ion battery. The typical e-rickshaws which you find in outskirts of most of the cities, which many places have grown into hundreds of thousands. A typical lead-acid battery on which it runs lasts for only 6 to 7 months, which means in a suburb of Delhi where already there is a lack of 1 lakh or 100,000 e-rickshaws are there. In a year, about 200,000 lead-acid batteries are recycled at street level. So the more and poison is going through the food chain or entering our bodies through the food chain than had those been diesel run 3-wheelers which would have emitted emission. So that's going to be a much bigger health risk which policymakers need to come out. I hope no lead-acid battery manufacturers are here to so I've been telling that in every forum. So government should take immediate action to stop this e-rickshaws which are running on lead-acid batteries. In the total cost of ownership, if you look at it for a 3-wheeler with a lithium-ion battery, it is much better. It runs for 4 years, 5 years. With the battery cost maybe 4 times more, but it runs for 4 years, not 6 months. So we are running late. We started 45 minutes late. We'll close 45 minutes. Then that is 4:15. Some important questions anybody have, will be happy to answer that, our panelist. Yeah, one hand there. Can you give the mic?
the comment on the leasing of the battery. I think it's a very interesting one, and I think it's something which should be explored. But a lot of things have to be taken into consideration. One is who takes the accountability. Well, things are going good, everything is great, but if anything goes wrong, who takes the responsibility? Is it the owner responsibility of the battery provider if he's not installed it correctly, or the owner of it's the responsibility of the vehicle where the battery is installed? It's like a typical problem in Delhi. PWD blames the MCD, MCD blames the PWD, and nothing gets done. I mean, we are stuck. And that is exactly what will happen. I mean, you're from Bangalore, I presume, and you know the situation which happened at the Ulsur flyover. Two people were given ownership of the same flyover, and they ended up crossing each other at different points. So this is the problem. In reality, in theory, everything is great, but in reality, a lot of things have to happen. Think of your car. If you were to just replace a gasoline engine each time, what kind of situations can happen? I mean, lithium ion is a chemistry which is very, very volatile. It is not a stable chemistry, and if not taken care of properly, it can lead to a lot of problems. So yes, I mean, we can put in rules and regulations in place, and theories are very good if it works, great, but Indian roads are not the best of conditions. We have flooding, we have a lot of vibrations, and all those issues can lead to aggravating the lithium-ion batteries. So something like that needs to be taken into account the Indian considerations and not just adopted just because in theory it looks very good.
This is an entirely new emerging area. There will be teething troubles even if some proven models from another country or city is brought to here. City to city we will have our own teething troubles which we should not be afraid of. We should go forward with these models. Many of these contracting issues can be there will be, when you operate a contract, there will be issues which can be fine-tuned. It should not be approved by the cabinet so that the cabinet contract cannot be changed. It has to be more flexible as we are moving forward. So anyone else want to comment on that, please? There was a question there.
My name is H.K. Agarwal. I am a chartered engineer. I have been associated with IIT Delhi on a project which was based on developing the technology for electric bus. This is the low-cost technology which has been developed to suit the Indian conditions. We used lead-acid batteries, we used Indian motors, we used Indian controllers. Our total cost was much less than 1 crore of rupees. It had two constituents. One was the electric propulsion system. The main constituent is the motor and the controller, and of course auxiliary panels. The other constituent consisted of lead-acid batteries plus a very low power generator to supplement the charge, and we could get 3 to 4 times the mileage than the normal which we could get. The trial was made in the campus because on-road trial was not allowed by the then government at that time. You see, our cost was much low.
So are you talking about your project, or you want to ask a question from the panels?
No, my
why don't you publish a paper? Everybody will be happy to read about it. It's honorable work which is done. We congratulate you for that. Thank you. Any other question? Yes. Please give the mic here.
My question is to Ms. Shreya Gradpalli. Thanks, ma'am, for the beautiful presentation. Ma'am, we have been hearing all about this NMT and last mile connectivity, multimodal integration, TOD for the last maybe 2 decades. And there appears to be some gap between what the policy planners and urban and transport planners are doing and what is happening on the ground. I just want to know why it is not happening actually. Like we are now talking, all the ministries, everybody is talking of electric bus, electric vehicles. There is a mission mode approach in the government. But on NMT, on walkability, these things are, very glamorously discussed in all these workshops. But it is not happening on the ground.
I would only partly agree with you on this because let me give you a few examples. When it comes to complete streets, there are multiple cities in India which are doing good work right now, of which some cities ITDP Urban Works Institute is directly engaged with. For example, Chennai, which has already created about 50 streets, existing streets have been completely redesigned, and 420 additional streets are in the process of being designed and retrofitted. Similarly, Pune is in the process of redesigning about 100 kilometers of streets with great footpaths and cycling facilities. And Pune has also developed its own, or is in the process of developing its cycling plan for the city. Similarly, as I said, Chennai has a non-motorized transportation policy which was adopted by the city government, very clearly stating that they'll spend 60% of their money towards non-motorized transportation infrastructure, that they have a Vision Zero, so they are taking action on it. There are also smaller cities like Coimbatore, and now Nashik has now recently appointed consultants to develop designs. So the work is happening in multiple places, and I'm sure Pawan would also have examples. Like Bangalore is a great example where Tender Shore has helped create very nice streets in the city, and more are now coming up. So it's not that it's not happening. It's not happening at the same pace at which all of us would like it to happen. Similarly, on the TOD front, Ahmedabad adopted a master plan which is based on principles of TOD. It's already under action. 15 local area plans have been developed based on the TOD principles. Jharkhand recently published a very progressive TOD policy by the state, so it's in the Gazette already, and so basis that they are going to now redevelop all their master plans for cities in Jharkhand. And Delhi itself has taken some steps towards it. Of course, a lot more needs to be done, and Delhi is, as you know, a more difficult place to work. So what all I want to say is that it's not as hopeless as you think it is. There is good work that's happening in our country, and the question is, how do we make this happen at a faster rate and in more places so that we can dramatically change how our cities function?
Thank you. You like to add?
So just to echo what Shreya has said, I think many cities are doing. In fact, in Haryana, they have adopted Haryana Vision Zero program, which is looking at road safety in every district, and as part of this, they are focusing on NMT. I think it's just that we need to make more noise about it. It's just that we hear that nothing is happening, but there's a lot that is happening. I mean, Bangalore, where I come from, Tender-Shore roads have been so successful in how they can be done. And also we have to distinguish one thing. In transport sector, it's little more of a project approach when you're talking about buses, but when you're talking about urban planning, it has its own cycle. I mean, you cannot change a city overnight, but you can get probably new buses in 2 years. So I think there is that difference also which we really need to accommodate, that these projects tend to take, because it's a multi-organizations that are involved. It's not just that only one organization sanctions. I think I am very optimistic, and I'm really hoping that we'll see much more of these projects in Indian cities.
Thank you. We have come.
Just a very small point. Also, parking, which I had mentioned at the end, which seems like a very contentious issue in many places. But the good news is multiple cities are actually taking action on it. Pune has a parking policy now, which will be adopted by the general body very soon. It's already been adopted by the executive body. And they are also going to start a market-based parking management contract in the city. Similarly, Chennai is also moving forward on similar lines of having initially around 10,000 slots to be managed using this system, an IT-based system. So there's technology involved, but the primary foundation is the principles. The principle is, if there's more demand, price it more so that parking is more evenly distributed, and ensure that there's only so much parking that the roads can take, and use that money towards better creation of sustainable transportation. So
we completely run out of time. Thank you very much. I thank the patient audience and the speakers on the panel and the organizers. In parting, like to state that the next biggest revolution is going to be the future of transportation. It is starting with electric mobility and autonomous cars, which you are hearing about. The next wave in 5 to 10 years is going to be, most of the things which are on the road, which you are today worrying, are all going to be on the air. Passenger drones, velocopter, a variety of new technologies in trials and testing in many places, vertical takeoff units. These are all going to be on the air. How to apportion vertical separation, where you have parking today, you talked about in the house, we will have balconies, we will have drone pad on our balconies which can come in. So we need to really look at policies and programs, how modern cities, the 100 smart cities which are talking about, do you need to give more space for parking or more space for all this vertical transportation systems which will be there 10 years down the line? So this is a very exciting time, and most of them are going to be powered by electricity. And that is why our worry, how grid operators can sustain the next wave of mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Session Chair, for that excellent deliberations, and thank you to all our expert panelists for sharing their time and experience with us. Please request you to remain with us for a couple of minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to have the tea break right now. We are going to immediately move on to the award session, so I request you to kindly remain with us. Before we conclude this session, may I request Session Chair in his capacity to kindly present the mementos to our esteemed panel here. May I please request Mr. Pillai to present the first memento to Ms. Shreya Gatapalli. To Mr. Stefan Kodek. To Mr. Pavan Malukutla. And to Mr. Anil Arora. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the awards function. A very warm welcome to the National Public Transport Excellence Awards ceremony. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to some very special guests who have joined us. We have with us Ms. Leena Nandan, Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. We are joined by Shri Abhay Damle, Joint Secretary Transport in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. We have with us Mrs. Aradhana Shukla, Principal Secretary Transport from the Government of Uttar Pradesh with us. We will be joined in this awards function with Mr. Alan Flosh, Secretary General of the International Union of Public Transport, Dr. M. Malakondaya, Vice President of the Association of State Road Transport Undertakings, and also the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of the Andhra Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, ASRTU instituted the National Public Transport Excellence Award to acknowledge, recognize and reward the extraordinary and innovative work done by the state road transport undertakings. Today we have 5 categories: safety, regularity and punctuality in operations, alternative fuel and environment management, commuter-friendly initiatives, best HR practices, best branding, marketing and communication activities. The awards would carry a trophy, a certificate and a cash reward. Rupees 10 lakhs for category 1, 7.5 lakhs for category 2, 5 lakhs for category 3, 2.5 lakhs for category 4 and 2.5 lakhs for category 5. The scheme rewards the outstanding and exemplary performance of public transport operations in the implementation of programs as per RTC Act 1950, initiatives and projects whose qualitative and quantitative outcomes results are of very high order and which have benefited a large number of commuters and considered for awards. The main objective of the award is to encourage the SRTUs in introducing innovative best practices in all areas of operation, resulting in better utilization of resources. Well, with these words, I would like to now invite Mr. P.S. Anand Rao, Executive Director of ASRTU, and I request him to make the welcome address.
Good evening, distinguished dignitaries, the awardees, the members of the industry, the officers and the chief executives of STUs, SPVs, and our transport organizations. My warmest greetings to all these distinguished dignitaries and delegates in attendance here today. Leena Nandan Madam, IAS Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor, Mr. Abhay Damle, Joint Secretary Transport, Mrs. Aradhana Shukla, Principal Secretary Transport, Uttar Pradesh, Mr. Alan Flash, and Mr. Nagaraj Yadav, the Chairman of BMTC. We are delighted to be with you here today. And thanks for your attendance here for this important event. The Transport Excellence Awards, very briefly in 2 lines I would like to say. This journey we began 2 years ago in 2015, which was the first edition of Transport Excellence Awards, to recognize the public transport with the established service level delivery benchmarks, which is a pride award in the transport industry. These awards are trailblazers, encourages the industry to do better, and motivates the entire fraternity to achieve higher goals. Multiple awards in the bus industry will encourage the industry to strive for excellence. I'm sure this award platform will bring together the stakeholders of the industry to discuss, debate, and share best practices. We just launched the best practices manual yesterday, and while celebrating the achievers in the industry. We had invited nominations from the state road transport undertakings, the SPVs, the municipal bodies, the transport departments for operating public transport in urban, intercity, and extreme geographical conditions. The entries to the awards after preliminary evaluation was placed before the jury, which was shortlisted based on the quality of entry. You will see the quality and the panel of jury very shortly on the screen. The individual presentations was made before the distinguished panel of jury. These categories that made to the final entry are truly exceptional for being awarded this evening. I wholeheartedly congratulate in advance the distinguished jury members who have made a very good effort in selecting these awards. I take this opportunity to thank all of you for the support for the international conference and exhibition, and for having been with us this evening and in conferring the Transport Excellence Awards. I must thank all the sponsors, organizers of the event, and the entire team of ASRTU and also those who have supported us, and the event management and the management of Maneksha Center. I extend a big thank you to all of you for a strong support. Sir, I would like to make a special mention here for all the support extended by the Ministry, the President of ASRTU and the Secretary RTH, the Additional Secretary Morth, Leenandan Madam, Mr. Abhay Damle, the Joint Secretary Transport and his team, and our Vice President ASRTU, Dr. Malakundaya, for a strong support to us, without which this was impossible. Before I conclude, I would request all the winners to share their success stories, which can go live on our social media through our hashtag ICPTI2017 or ASRTU2017. So you may tweet your feedback also on this. Each one of you deserve to be celebrated with your hard work in building the transport industry. So I would now call upon the dignitaries to kindly present the awards. We call upon the names and also the dignitaries. We can come and have the awards on the.
We just wanted to briefly mention about our jury members. We'd like to recognize our jury members, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. Professor Geetam Tiwari from IIT Delhi, Chair Professor for Transport Planning at the Transportation Research and Injury Prevention Program and Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Delhi. Dr. Kulwant Singh, presently acting as the coordinator of Smart Move High Level Group of International Road Transport Union. Mr. Amit Bhatt, Director of Integrated Urban Transport at WRI India. Mr. Ravi Gadepalli, who manages the transport program at the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, which works to strengthen the energy security of India by aiding the design and implementation of policies that support sustainable mobility, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now request our esteemed guest to kindly present the awards this evening. So if you may guide them to. The jury members evaluated the nominations received from the STUs and ranked the following STUs category wise. May I please request Mrs. Leena Nandan, Mr. Abhay Damle, and along with Mrs. Aradhana Shukla. May I also invite Mr. Alan Flosh to join in. So, ladies and gentlemen, the category of safety, regularity, and punctuality in operations, the award goes to Uttar Pradesh SRTC Pink Bus Service. For Pink Bus Service, which is an en route connecting Lucknow and Delhi. And ladies and gentlemen, this is exclusively for women passengers with women conductors, guards, and electronic surveillance. I would like audience to really be appreciative and encouraging. I want to hear really loud applause, and please be liberal with your applause. I request team to face the camera so that we can get a better picture. Uttar Pradesh SRTC. Please face the camera so that you can get a wonderful photograph. Heartiest congratulations to the entire team. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the next winner, which is the Karnataka SRTC, which wins the runner-up for Vehicle Tracking Monitoring System and Passenger Information System. Karnataka SRTC, I cannot hear any applause, just a few light applause from this side. I invite team of Karnataka SRTC to kindly join us. They have won the runners-up in the category of safety, regularity, and punctuality in operations. So, Team Karnataka SRTC is joining us to receive their award. So, heartiest congratulations to them, Team Karnataka SRTC. Congratulations. Moving on to the next category of alternative fuel and environment management. Unfortunately, no STUs qualified for this. So we move on to the next category after that, which is the category of commuter-friendly initiatives and feedback from commuter angle. And ladies and gentlemen, the winner is the Telangana SRTC for Vajra service at doorstep. May I invite team members of Telangana SRTC to join. Provides bus facility nearest to the residence of passengers. Many congratulations. And in the same category, the runner-up award goes to Maharashtra SRTC for Wi-Fi entertainment platform, a service that can be availed by any passenger that boards a bus. Maharashtra SRTC. Many congratulations. And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the category of Best HR Practices, the award goes to Northwestern Karnataka Road Transport Corporation for mobile phone app leave application management system. The crew can apply for leave and avail anywhere and anytime. Many congratulations. And in the category of Best Branding, Marketing and Communication Activities, the award goes to Andhra Pradesh SRTC for introduction of new Ultra Deluxe brand of buses for improving passenger comfort level with minimal cost. May I request team members to kindly face the cameras. Many congratulations, Andhra Pradesh SRTC. And in the same category, the runner-up prize goes to Gujarat SRTC for the Metro Link service. Reduces city traffic, connects border point of one city to border point of another city. Gujarat SRTC. Also, ASRTU recognizes the smaller SRTUs performing in different terrains or circumstances to encourage to excel further for providing better public transport. So the following STUs are recognized for their achievements. Arunachal Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation special recognition on best performing northeastern SRTUs. Ladies and gentlemen, the Arunachal Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation. And then we have the next winner, which is Jammu and Kashmir State Road Transport Corporation, and they have a special recognition on the STU operating in severe geographical conditions. I think they deserve a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And in the same category, Navi Mumbai Municipal Transport special recognition on the ITS implementation in smaller urban municipal transport. Navi Mumbai Municipal Transport, ladies and gentlemen. Although we conclude the awards, we have a few more special recognitions. A certificate of appreciation for compiling the best practices of the member STUs as a manual is going to be presented to Ms. T.S. Lata, Senior PRO from KSRTC. We would like to give a special recognition to KMS Coach Builders, ladies and gentlemen. KMS established in 2005 and has built over 50,000 buses for all STUs, including electric, sleeper, urban, suburban, and the largest number of JNN URM buses. May I please invite Mr. Ismail Sharif, MD, for his contribution. I'd like to recognize him for this contribution from KMS Coach Builders, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to now recognize and felicitate our knowledge partners. May I please request Secretary General of UITP, Mr. Alan Floch, to kindly receive this honor. And our next knowledge partner, WRI India, and on their behalf, may I please request Mr. Pawan Malakotla, Director WRI India, to kindly receive this honor. We would like to take a moment to appreciate the contribution of our sponsors, and would like to invite them one by one to receive the small token of appreciation. So I would like to now, ladies and gentlemen, invite Sri Bhay Damle, and may I, sir, please request you to say a few words on this occasion.
Distinguished guests on the dais, Madam Leena Nandan, Mrs. Aradhana Shukla, Sri Mala Kundaya, Sri Anand Rao, Executive Director, ASRTU, Chief Executive Officers of the State Transport Undertakings and SPVs of the states, distinguished speakers and panelists who have bestowed their knowledge during the conference, and ladies and gentlemen. A very warm evening on behalf of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. It's really indeed a pleasure that ASRTU has taken this initiative to organize the second version of the International Conference on Public Transport. The transport is definitely getting bigger and bigger, and it's truly becoming international in the sense that I was told there are 14 countries to be precise, which participated in this program. So this definitely deserves a loud applause for the true international nature of the conference. And I'm very sure that the way this year I saw the participation of the CEOs of the state transport undertakings, and of course Mr. Nagaraj is the only chairman, but then he has led the way by showing that yes, non-executive officers also are very much interested in public transport. So thank you, sir. And probably all this knowledge and experience and best practices deliberated during the workshop and conference would definitely, some of them would be imbibed by the STUs, I am very sure, and we would also start seeing truly international nature of public transport services being offered to our common citizens. That is our ultimate goal. And at the same time, we should also, all of us should start working towards how to augment the public transport capacity in next couple of years, or maybe what kind of goals we should set for ourselves, how we can double in next 3 years or triple in next 5 years. That kind of goal we should set for ourselves, all the public transport undertakings put together, and let us try to work towards that by improving the efficiency, by augmenting the fleet, by providing services. Can we kind of assure our citizens that yes, in every urban agglomeration, every 500 meters, I will be able to provide you a public transport. These are the kind of goals which need to be set for themselves by the public transport undertakings. And once having set the goals, they should constantly work towards that. That is the only way to achieve good penetration of the public transport services across the country. So once again, I congratulate Asrtu for this wonderful conference and wish all the participants very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tamble, for your kind words. I would, ladies and gentlemen, now like to invite Mrs. Leena Nandan, Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor in the Ministry, and may I please request her to kindly say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, it is a privilege for me to have participated in this two-day event by coming for the awards function. And it is also a great learning because I have been able to see the kind of innovation that our public sector undertakings, the transport corporations, the kind of interest and innovation that they are bringing into this somewhat humdrum business of public transportation. While the Roads and Highways Ministry concentrates on building in India, building for India, the transport factor is the one which brings us all together, and the more that we contribute to it in terms of bringing in efficiency, punctuality, safety, and pollution-free systems of movement, the more we contribute to ourselves and to the nation in general. I would like to particularly mention that the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has not just been focusing on the larger picture of building roads and building bridges and connecting people. It has also been trying to come out with reforms that can motivate the public sector undertakings, that can really mobilize this entire sector of movement of people, because public transportation is really the key to bringing in prosperity in a very big way. The more we have efficient and seamless transportation, the more we are able to contribute to building a very prosperous and well-connected nation. And I am very heartened to see the kind of interest and innovation that many of the public sector undertakings have brought in. I would like to assure you that there are many more such interesting things that the ministry promises to bring in, some policy initiatives, guidelines, schemes. So do keep connected with us and let us all work together. Let us all join hands for a very fast-moving and very prosperous country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nandan, for your kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Mrs. Aradhana Shukla, Principal Secretary, the Transport to the Government of Uttar Pradesh, to kindly share her views with us.
Mrs. Leena Nandan, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Mr. Abhay Damle, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Mr. Malkondia, Managing Director of Andhra Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation, Mr. Nagraj Yadav, and all other dignitaries, friends and colleagues present here, very good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak out here. I was least expecting it because after the chief guest, I thought that we would just be having a round of thanks, but thank you for giving me this little opportunity to also share my views. It was a proud moment for me today as Uttar Pradesh received the award for running a pink bus service aimed only at women passengers, aimed at women empowerment, aimed at providing security and safety to women, We started this bus service on a trial run between Ghaziabad and Lucknow, and it is equipped with CCTV, panic button, interceptors in the sense of flying squads at various points, and each row has a panic button. It's got Wi-Fi, it's got entertainment, it's got exclusive women conductors. They are here, the staff is here today, and they were the proud recipient of the awards. And I'm so glad that Asrtu has recognized this initiative. And you would be happy to learn that we would be upscaling this. The Government of India has also recognized that this is a good initiative, and in fact has gone so far as to recommend to other states that they should also try this. And just recently Mr. Damle was kind enough to sanction a very large sum for getting 50 more pink buses in Uttar Pradesh. Having said that, thank you very much, Mr. Damle and Mrs. Leena Nandan, because without ma'am is also from UP Cadre, though I'm sure that she doesn't have a bias, but I hope that she has a little softness towards UP always, and in future also we would be benefited for all the good work which UP is trying to do. And not much is ever known about Uttar Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation, but another thing which I would like to share with you is that we are the only state road corporation which has been in operational profit for the last 3 years. Now this is a very big thing because, and we have really made quite a jump from 5 crores in 14-15 to 9 crores in 15-16 to 92 crores in 16-17. And we hope to do better. And right now, the way we are doing it is that we are, in fact, monitoring our profit on a daily basis. And every day we are trying to ensure that all our depots are in profit. And by this, we hope that next year we'd have better news. This is particularly commendable for UPSRTC because as we all of us sitting out here know that none of the state road transport organizations have been continuously in profit for 3 years ever. So this itself is a very big feat that we've managed to do this for 3 years in a row. And I congratulate the entire UPSRTC team who is sitting here. With this, we have also done a few new initiatives which I'll share with you in 30 seconds. Is that we've got all our bus stations Wi-Fi. And the way I'm hearing it is that Wi-Fi on buses has been done before, but bus stations becoming Wi-Fi is perhaps the first time an initiative like this has been done. And UP has 75 districts in which 66 districts and 75 bus stations have been made Wi-Fi, and we've just launched this on the 8th of August, a few days ago. And with that, we've also started this process of installing water ATMs, in which we are giving water at 1 rupee a litre. And that, I think, is again a big thing for public convenience. From my knowledge, whatever we tried to glean is that other other state road transport organizations have still not started with water ATMs, and I'm sure they will also. We would also appreciate it if others who have done such things could just drop us a line and tell us how they did what they've done. We would like to replicate in UP. I'm sure everybody is doing a great job. Morth is under the able leadership of the Honorable Minister, and Mrs. Leena Nandan and Mr. Abhay Damle are always very encouraging, very supportive of whatever we come up with. Thank you so much for that. Asrtu also is always giving us advice and information and taking us along and helping us to find out whatever we need to. Thank you for that also. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here for 2 days, Mr. Rao. I would like to apologize for that, but I had a little short notice. But I'm happy to be here today, and thank you once again for your patience and your time and for the award. Thank you.
Sorry for just interruption. The state transport undertakings who are interested in propagating or procuring pink buses, I would suggest that UPSRTC, after this conference, you can just have a chat with UPSRTC officials, and pink buses with the Wi-Fi and whatever other panic button and other facilities. You can just get a clue. Then ASRTU would circulate you the copy of the draft proposal. You can send us immediately. We will try to get it through Nirbhaya Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Shukla, for your kind address, and I'm sure your inspiring initiatives by the government and many other states would follow that. Before our esteemed dignitaries have to leave because of their prior commitments, but before they leave, I'd just like to request them to stay for a couple of more minutes, and we just like to present mementos to them as a small token of our appreciation. And to do the honors, may I please request Dr. Malakondia to present the mementos. May I please request you to present the first memento to Mrs. Leena Nandan. May I please request you to present the next memento to Shri Abhay Damle. And may I once again request you to present the next memento to Mrs. Aradhana Shukla. Thank you, esteemed dignitaries, for your gracious presence and time. May I invite Mr. Yadav, Chairman BMTC, to join us. I will request Dr. Malakonda and Mr. Yadav to do the honors in presenting the recognition to our sponsors. I would like to invite in the category of the sponsorship. Firstly, may I please request representatives from Goldstone, who are a diamond sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please request you to remain with us? We're just presenting the recognition to our sponsors. Can we please come forward to give the recognition to the sponsors? Please come forward. And I request you to kindly applaud Goldstone, who was a diamond sponsor. We now move on. JTAC Bus Air Conditioner, who's our gold sponsor. Ashok Leyland. I cannot hear any applause at all. Ashok Leyland, ladies and gentlemen, who are also our gold sponsors. Tata Motors, who are also our gold sponsors. Volvo, also a gold sponsor. We now move on to our silver sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite representatives from Advait. May I now invite our representatives from Ampoli, who are also our silver sponsors. First group, they are also part of our silver sponsors. We now move on to our bronze sponsors. May I invite representatives from MedShield? May I invite representatives from CDAC? May I invite representatives from Adore? Do we have any representative from Adore? Okay, we will move forward. May I invite representatives from Kiro? From Hikvision? May I now invite our other sponsors, KPIT? And last but not least, from IOCL. Let's have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Malakonda, and thank you, Mr. Yadav, for presenting these. I would like to now invite Captain Dr. Sanir Patel, Director, CIRT, to kindly propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening to all. Respected Vice President and MD, APSRTC Malkondaya sir, Uma Shankar sir, Nagaraj Yadav, Executive Director Anand Rao sir, and all the Managing Directors, CEOs of all STUs, Mr. Alien Paz. We all are attending the 2-day seminar or international conference. This was inaugurated by our Honorable Secretary, MORT, Mr. Yudhwar Singh Malik, who has emphasized on the challenges faced by the STUs, and main emphasis was on affordable and accessible public transport model for urban and rural. He has encouraged the SRTUs to use the electrical vehicles. Mr. Alan Plaus, he has insight on where the India stand compared with the other developed nations in case of public trans. It was a real eye-opener for us, sir. Then the first session was a digital transition in ASRTUs. Joint Secretary Morth and Joint Secretary IT, they both have chaired the session, and the government interest is that transition from 329 crores to 2,500 crores. We have to reach to that. That was the target given to us. The second session was related to sustainable road transport, highlighting the merits and the recent reforms and initiatives by the government. This includes Motor Vehicle Amendment Bill and GST and demonetization. Third session was All the panelists discussed new possibilities and updated bus business models for the augmentation of public transport and such outsourcing of operations to private operators. The second day, we have visited the very well organized exhibition is seen by the participant, and today there was two very important sessions. The first session was on the safety in public transport, which causes of congestion in the cities, safety of women, in which Mrs. Varsha Joshi, Transport Commissioner of Delhi, has chaired the session. The second was future of public transport with emphasis on emissions and last mile connectivity. Shreya has given very well presentation on parking places. And the aim of this event is to provide a better picture for manufacturers, policy makers through dialogues, interactions, and demonstrations to provide a better quality service for sustainable and cleaner environment for public transport users in India. I congratulate to all the prize winners as STUs to decide their roadmap for 2030, which is very important for us. And I'm sure that Asrtu and CRT will be always work together for them to bring the new technologies for better transportation to the public of India. I thank to all of you for attending this prestigious function, and I really appreciate and congratulate to Sri Anand Raoji and his team for hard and dedicated work. Thanks you for attending this memorable function. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Patil, for your extremely warm vote of thanks. May I now invite Mr. Nagaraj Yadav, Chairman of BMTC, to kindly say a few words. He wants to share his views. Oh. So please. He would like to express his heartfelt thanks in felicitating and recognizing the efforts that the team of Asrtu has put up in creating this successful conference. So let's have a big round of applause for this team, ladies and gentlemen. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude the International Conference and Exhibition on Public Transport Innovation, ICPTI 2017. Thank you for being with us and have a great evening. Namaskar. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request all awardees and also other dignitaries to kindly take a photograph at the cutout of the ICPTI, which is right behind the exhibition area. I had mentioned to you about this yesterday also, and awardees are requested to kindly line up and take a photograph there. Thank you.